Sure, Dan, and we got a lot to inform us with. Since you're back in session, correct? Everybody's back in house session, and on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, thank you for being here. A little different location this morning. There's a big event going on over at the Chamber and Commerce building this afternoon, right? Well, we had to move it. Anyways, I think I'll just turn it over to you guys, and you can fight it out between yourselves. Who's going to go first and last?
Well, there's two of them. Only one of me.
Oh, okay. So does that mean you have to go first?
That's not fair. So I want to introduce somebody. Well, actually, I'm going to let him introduce himself because this is our little mini workforce development project that we do at the summit. We're webcasting. It was advertised in the paper. Folks can go to, I think it's YouTube.
Yep.
Real time and watch what's going on. And this guy's going to need a job someday. So we'll let him. You have 60 seconds to promote yourself, bro.
All right,
go at it, man.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brock Patterson. I'm an intern for the Republican Senate this session. I recently graduated from IU Bloomington. I'm starting law school in the fall, and just really excited and glad that I can come up and help Senator Holdman with all of his third house meetings. It's good to see you all this morning, and hopefully it'll be a good time.
You'll need a job someday.
And I will need a job someday. So keep me in mind, please.
He'll give out his cards. Probably don't even have cards.
No, just yours.
Oh. We can track you down. Matt, Dan?
You want to go first? You want Alex to go first? That's unusual. That's okay. We'll start. So, okay. Well, thank you for having us today. It was good to get it out and we'll keep on your mind. We are down to the last 2 weeks of session. So it will be 2.5 weeks, I should say. We will, and all of our committees are ending on Monday. Tuesday afternoon in the House. I think the Senate goes till Thursday. So that's the last day a bill can get out of committee. If the bill does not get out of committee, it is effectively dead. So then we move to the end of next week will be the last day for second reading, which is amending bills. And then from there out, it is simply voting on bills that have come in their House or dissenting on what was changed in one House or the other, and then going to conference committee, working out the details, and then finally coming up with the final version of the bill. The big issues out there have been, I think I've said this before, we came into this session with, as the speaker said, really no bright, shiny object. In the past, there's always been a bigger issue, whether it be road funding a year ago, we've had education reform, we've had right to work. We've always had an issue that really kind of jazzed people up. This is a short session, which means we go to the middle of March. Non-budgets, you're not dealing with a lot of financial issues. So it really creates more of a, what's out there needs to be cleared up, tweaked, changed a little bit. Then you always kind of wait and see what bubbles to the surface. A couple of things that we set as our agenda, and I think it was Zach was handing them out, and you didn't get one that looks like this. And would you please silence your phones?
No, sir.
Thank you. Okay. We said a couple things as our priority. We had good news, bad news. Good news is we had an increase in public education enrollment, higher than what we anticipated or estimated. That's a very positive thing. The downside of that is we have to make schools whole. That would, if we wouldn't have gone in and said we will keep that promise and make schools whole, it would have affected all schools. We would have seen a lower amount of money going to them. So we did that. to drive in every Hoosier. The budget last year increased the number of treatment centers in Indiana to I think 18, and now we're taking that up to 27. So there'll be 27 additional treatment centers in Indiana. I think that's going to get to a part of it. I think with some of the prescribing issues, a part, and then there's little things nip around the edges. With I've got a bill right now with workers' compensation that deals with the opioids, and so you're seeing a lot of bills in different areas that deal with that as well. That's kind of the top end stuff. I'll kind of maybe stop there and throw it to the Dan to add to that, and then to the Senate, and then we can get more into specific things maybe we were doing in this session. And then the things that bubble to the top. So anyway, Dan, you want to?
Well, Matt covered most of the legislation pretty well, I think. There have been some interesting things going on. Most of you know that Senator Long announced his retirement. And one of the things that I would like to say to all of you is here sits a fellow who may be in line for that seat. And we all need to get on board with Travis. It would be absolutely remarkable if we could have a House floor leader from Northeast Indiana and a pro tem from Northeast Indiana. Keep those people right here. Regardless of what people think, that position does have a lot of influence in it and bring back to this area a lot of really good things. Some of the things that are going on, Matt alluded to the opioid crisis. I'm not sure anybody has a one-shot fix for the opioid crisis. And so we're continuing to try to whittle away at it. It's been coming for a long time. It's developed over years and years and years. And we're probably not going to be able to solve it in one session or two sessions of the General Assembly. I sit on a foundation that works on opioid abuse in the Fort Wayne area, the Lutheran Foundation. And we heard testimony in that group that the local judge up there, maybe some of you know her, Wendy Davis, said she had 14 people in lockup, dries them out, but there are no treatment programs, no rehab programs for them to get into. Most of those successful rehab programs run anywhere from 6 to 9 months, get people actually cleaned out and back on their feet again. And so that's one of the things that we're having trouble fighting. There are some issues that Matt touched on to help that, the 9 new treatment centers. Also, we've changed a little bit the requirement. We're having trouble finding people to administer those treatments. And so we've changed some of the departments in FSSA require that they have master's degrees if they're not employees of FSSA. And we've changed that so that they can do it with bachelor's degrees, because the people that are employees of FSSA only are required to have bachelor's degrees. So hopefully we'll bring more people in to have more people administer those treatment programs. The workforce development issue is, I think, is a great start, and I view it as just that. We have had a massive amount of money. Money's not the problem, in my opinion. But we have little programs going on all over from, Matt said 9. I think there's probably closer to 90. Different things going on for training. And 10.001 was an attempt to kind of strip all of that out, do away with everything, and then reorganize the whole thing. Senate Bill 50 does a lot of the same things. There are quite a bit of differences in the two bills, but as Matt said, I think in the end we're going to probably come down with some kind of a program, maybe a better funded single program could work much better than 50 or so programs out there with a little bit of funding, and hopefully it'll help that workforce development issue. We had You might be interested in the 1005, that was a township government bill. It required townships of less than 1,200 to consolidate with another township. That was discussed, it was discussed in committee, it was discussed in different caucuses, it was discussed and discussed and discussed, and it kind of just gradually went away. There was a lot of pushback from local government, and I think that's a value of constituents of you communicating with us. So we understand what you would like government to look like. I brought copies of the survey results, and I will tell you that those are just from the district that I represent. They don't reflect what people feel in Matt's district or in Travis's district. And it's always surprising when you look at those. I think there's, everybody chooses different questions to put on the questionnaire, but there's always one or two surprises on there. I particularly was interested in the legalization of marijuana, both medical and recreational, and they're almost an exact flip. In their medical marijuana has about 70% support roughly, and 30% of the people are opposed to medical marijuana. But when you flip it to decriminalizing, or actually opening up everything in marijuana, it's about 70% opposed and 30% in favor. I just think it's interesting. We heard some very interesting testimony in the House on medical marijuana, and it's very difficult to analyze and make some of those decisions. We had a former member of the House, Representative Tom Holdman, who has MS, is in a wheelchair, and he says the only way that he can get relief from his pain of MS is with medical marijuana. So how do you, when we have doctors prescribing morphine, we have doctors prescribing opioids, how do you say, no, you can't have that? It makes you think a little bit. I'm certainly not a marijuana fan, but it makes you think a little bit about what we're doing down there at the state. Travis, go ahead.
That was one of the issues that bubbled to the top.
Well, thanks for having us. Thanks to the chamber for having us. Forgot to introduce Chris Crabtree. We'll turn it over to him when we're done, and you can just take the rest of the morning to talk to us about federal issues. Congressman Banks' office. Lots of issues around this whole marijuana thing that have to do with federal law, to be honest with you. And I am a rule of law guy that says that if it is against the law, and we don't like it, we change the law. We don't allow folks to do something that is against the law. And that's the problem we had. Previous administration at the federal level has turned its back and looked the other way. And states said we're going to legalize medical marijuana, we're going to legalize recreational marijuana, and now we've got a big fat mess on our hands because that barn door has been opened. And how do we get that back? And how do we fix this? Because it is still against federal law to do that. That's where we come down on this. Let me just say, the most important piece of legislation apparently has been Sunday sales of alcohol. So next Sunday, get there early because you will be able to buy beer on Sunday. And I know that's not everybody been waiting for bated breath to buy your beer on Sunday. And I have actually voted against that piece of legislation every time it's come up in the Senate, but that's another issue. Related to federal law and state law, this whole issue with CBD oil is a hot issue. I
I've gotten some really ugly emails because I voted against the Senate version of the CBD oil bill because it contains, the bill contains language that says that the CBD oil can contain up to 0.3% THC. Well, THC is the reacting drug that's in marijuana. And my position, as well as about 13 others in the Senate, have said, why are we doing 0.3? And the response from the bill author said, well, because it's not an exact science in testing to say if it's 0.3, it's actually 0.3. And I said, so why can't it be 0% THC? Well, because it's not an exact science. So I said, so 0.3 could actually be 0.4, or it could be 0.9, or 1.2. Well, he shrugged his shoulders and said, well, that's the way the bill is. And we got the majority of the Senate that a number of us disagreed with to go along with it. I'd have no problems voting for CBD oil legalization or re-legalization because of what we did last year, if it has 0% THC. And I think once we start down that path, it's a slippery slope for us, and we just stay away from it. I'm very sympathetic to folks. We have a member of the Senate whose son has a seizure disorder, and they claim they go to Michigan and buy CBD oil that has 0.3% THC, and this relieves some of the seizures that his son is having. The law is the law. Push some of those kids back into public school. We found out that some school corporations and some superintendents, none present, were very creative in what they were doing. And I'm somewhat sympathetic to this, but once again, it's not the way the law intended it to be. They would take 4-year-olds, go out and round up some 4-year-olds and have the parents sign a form asking for a waiver to send a 4-year-old to kindergarten that looked like pre-K, except that they said that the child needed to be in kindergarten. And so the school board, if they had a policy, would approve that 4-year-old going to kindergarten, and it would be turned in then in their ADM count as an additional student in kindergarten, and the state would basically pay for that 4-year-old to go to kindergarten. And then the child repeats kindergarten because then they're 5 and they can go to kindergarten then. And so then it becomes a legal 5-year-old to go to kindergarten. And so I think the last number I heard was about $18 million that we were spending on just a few school corporations that were basically figuring out a way to kind of wind around the law to say we've got these additional kids. And I'm trying to say Bluffton Harrison is not one of those school corporations. that, we're not gonna do that anymore. Next year, there will be no 4-year-olds that are going to intentionally repeat kindergarten to get that extra 80 money for the kindergarten kids. But we come down to about maybe right around 1,000 kids that we don't know where they came from. And I've asked that question numerous times. Was this migration into the state, in migration? Was there a bit of a spike 5 years ago with births in the state? I think some of it is in migration, to be honest with you, because Indiana is attracting folks to the state now, and we're going to see some good growth in the state from a population standpoint. We are one of the top tech industry states in the Midwest now, and Indiana is being called by folks in the tech world as what do you call it? Silicon Valley, Silicon Prairie, is what folks are calling Indiana now, because of the influx of tech jobs coming to the state. But that all goes back to the issue that the House is grappling with too, and that's the whole workforce issue. How do we push that down to high school and middle school kids to the workforce and do something with that $1 billion that Matt and Dan talked about that we're spending out there that maybe isn't being most effective. One important piece of the bill, and it's really kind of a geeky kind of thing, but very important to us, it's got a sizable fiscal on it that we're just going to do away this sales tax on software. If it is basically hosted in the cloud, we would exempt that sales tax. So you have folks like Salesforce and some of the folks who do a lot of cloud-based work in Indiana. It would exempt that from sales tax because we don't really know. Department of Revenue has to look at those on a case-by-case basis. And this would cost us anywhere from $6 to $15 million. We really don't know because we don't know who isn't paying tax and should be paying tax unless we necessarily audit that company. And so it's been tough to get a good fiscal number on that, but it draws a bright line and sends a signal to the rest of the country. We would be one of only 3 other states in the country, none in the Midwest, that says that cloud-based software is tax exempt. So it sends a strong signal to folks like Amazon that we're very friendly to you, for your business here, tax it for that software component. So glad to answer questions. Doing our best to clean up House bills that they've sent over in a mess, which is always our challenge. I let you guys go first, and you thought you, but the last word.
We got things to say.
We get along well. I'd have to tell you though, there will be weeks at a time that I will not see these 2 guys. Because once you get inside the walls, you just don't know what goes on the other side of the State House many times. That's a good thing and a bad thing, because sometimes we need to see each other more often than we do. But one nice thing that happens with the Northeast region and the chamber that Wells County is a part of, and all of our area, every Wednesday morning we get together for breakfast. And it's great. I do see these guys across the street at breakfast outside the State House, which is really good. There's a lot of good stuff that takes place there. We track each other's bills and help each other out to make sure we get stuff done for Northeast Indiana. So it's a good thing. So with that, I think we can just open up to questions that you may have. If there are no questions, Chris Crabtree will be glad to answer any questions. So thanks for being here today. Appreciate it. I'm waiting for that big thing to come down the street so everybody watches out the street to see what
It had an east, yeah.
I was at the Farm Bureau for a meeting this morning, and I'm sitting where I can see out the window, and somebody's talking to me, and
catches, and I thought it was a train. Did you have one?
We saw it at the intersection of 124 and 1. They're getting ready to raise the.
When we get done, you can probably catch it, because it only made it from Markle to Bluffton from 5 o'clock last night to this morning. So, yeah, be able to catch it if you want.
We're going to Decatur from here, maybe we'll go up
Yeah,
there.
you might work there.
Yeah, might be smart. So.
Travis, what do we need to do as a community group to help support you to take long spot? And I mean, be willing. I mean, can you share something on that?
I'm hesitant to get too far deep into that because that's, it's not a political issue, but it is a political issue. And so I'm somewhat hesitant. Northeast Indiana just needs to make sure that their delegation in the Senate votes that way. So Liz Brown, Andy Zay, Dennis Cruz, Sue Blake, both from Northeast Indiana. So, we're working at it.
So that is a Senate vote then on who?
It's the Senate, technically it's the Senate, the whole Senate votes, but it will be decided in the Republican caucus since we have a majority. So I'd rather these guys tell you than me.
Okay. Sorry, I asked you. How about you, Dan or Matt? What do we need to do?
Well, I don't want to speak into it. I'm the one that brought it up.
Yeah.
The process is on organizational day, which won't be until next November. After the election takes place. And that's assuming that Travis makes it through. It's right. It's a little shaky right now. Any support you can give it, financial support is a big plus, because a lot of the Senate members will look at how much money can you raise for the caucus to keep the Republicans in the majority in the House, in the Senate. The Senate Republicans hold a supermajority, and so each caucus typically picks someone they want to be pro tem, and then the vote goes to the floor. But since the Republicans have a supermajority, it will be the Republican choice. We just need to, I guess, if you run into senators, you might express your support for Travis. If you're out, here I am talking, okay? Support Travis for that position, and not forget about it until next November, but continue to let people know that he's a good choice and is capable and has the expertise to handle the job and make it good. He's a little more conservative than I am. You know, I voted for the 0.3%.
So did I.
That's okay. That's okay.
Not really nothing to add. Dan has hit the nail on the head. I think there's 3 candidates right now that have kind of made it public. We know Senator Holdman, Rod Bray from the Indianapolis area, and then Mark Messmer is from Jasper. Mark is my roommate. He's been my roommate since I got there in 08. So when I heard his name the first time, I told him, I said, we just don't talk anymore. You know, we lived together, I didn't even know he was doing that. So, but Mark's a good guy. I think the long side of him comes down to pretty much Holdman and Bray. I think one thing that Travis has going for him, if you look at the political map, normally the caucuses try to stay away from consolidating power in one area. So with Speaker Bosma being in Indianapolis, you know, I would hope that people would look at that and say, well, if it's going to come down to Bray and Holdman, we need to make sure Northeast Indiana, I mean, even the people in the Southwest or Southeast may say we'd rather have somebody in the Northeast than consolidate those two. So I think that actually helps Travis, that if it comes down to Bray and Holdman, that he's outside of the donut, because the speaker's inside. And those are the 2 most powerful positions in the General Assembly or the Speaker and the Pro Tem. So it's nice to see those. David Long's been in that position with Brian. So I think a natural changeover would be to keep Northeast Indiana. So I think that's an inside track for Travis.
Somebody's gonna ask.
So what's on your mind?
Somebody's gonna ask.
I'll ask.
Fire away.
I
The issue of just guns in school, the question of raising the age, I'm not an A+ rated member in the NRA, partly because I would like to see more background checks at gun shows. I think I would have mandatory training. I've seen too many people in a gun shop where I've bought guns that are, first time ever I've had a gun in my hand or waving it around. I mean, I think they need to have training. So I would require mandatory training on a purchase of a handgun. But I think as we start to hear more of what's coming out of Parkland, I don't think it's just guns. When you start to hear security didn't do what they were to do, when you have 4 police officers standing outside of a school, not reacting, I think that's a problem. When we have changed entrances to schools. I know initially coming into Bluffton, one of the first schools I came into, they had to go through the administration office and go through a secure system was Bluffton. South Adams is like that now. More and more schools are like that. I think you're going to see a push to, if you have to secure more of the schools, whether it be restricting of entrances, backpack inspections, whatever. On the federal level, when you start talking about bump stocks, things like that, I'm okay with some of that being restricted. So I'm not a guy, I'm a strong Second Amendment. I think when you talk about rule of law, I start to hear people say things like, well, the Second Amendment is not really intended to do what it's intended to do, and it really shouldn't be there. Then you change the law. You have a right to do a constitutional amendment and change and take out. We repeal prohibition, you can repeal the Second Amendment, but you can't ignore it. no different than you ignore any other of the amendments that are given to us. So it's a difficult balance, but at the same time, I do put public safety ahead of my right to have a gun. But I think if we simply now say the answer is restrict all guns, I don't think that answers the question of safety in the schools. So yeah, so I think that's where I'm at. I'm not I talk to high school kids, and I tee it up by saying this, do you think your teacher should have a right to be armed? You don't know it, you never know it. I build a case for that, okay? And then simply ask them this question. Can you ask your teacher to maybe shoot one of their students? What are the police trained to do? Kill the person with a gun? What if they kill your teacher? Yeah, those are things we've got to work through that are not as simple as give the teacher a gun. At the same time, one example, I think the one from Connecticut, where had you had an armed administration, this kid would have shot a secretary, and that would have been the end of it, instead of 31 school kids. So we'll have that discussion, but really, I don't think the answer is always guns. It's a lot more to it than that.
I think we've taken some proactive steps. I have a handout that was passed out. I think Rob, you got this to everybody. Well, we have done in Indiana, and I think we've been very proactive. I mean, we're one of only 5 states that's a red flag law, which you have a lot of constitutionalists that say that's a step over the line with our red flag law, because if a police officer is involved in a situation or they get reports that someone has weapons and that they are suspicious that they may do themselves or someone else harm, the police can actually go and seize all of the weapons from their home and take their weapons away from them. Then it's just a matter of that officer and the department going to court and getting retroactively, and this is the legal issue that constitutionalists come up with, retroactively, then you do the due process thing. You get a warrant and show probable cause to have taken the weapon. And it can be done on a 180-day cycle, that every 180 days that person can come back to court and say, I want my guns back, and here's why. I think had it been in this particular case that happened in Florida, I think that may have prevented the case, because the kid took a gun from home. The FBI messed up in that case. And like Matt said, it was just a bad set of circumstances. When that many, 23 some calls had been made or referrals had been made to the FBI. And 30, way over the line that somebody wasn't doing something. Well, I bet now that they will do something when they start getting those calls coming in. It's too bad that we've sacrificed the lives of kids, coaches, and teachers to get to this point. But we have about 325 million people in this country. It's a wonder this hasn't happened more, because there's a lot of people being crazy out of 325 million people. And I think we have done a lot of right things, and talk about on that handout that I gave you, school safety, designated every school corporation requiring them to designate someone in charge. I know my wife taught until just last year, she taught at Northern Hills for 30 years. They did active shooter training. It's sacrificed and what you can do to keep your kids safe. And, they did some of those things, and maybe it is a gun. Maybe there's a teacher, and I can't, where it was in Dallas or somewhere, where the sheriff said we're going to train teachers. They'll be basically undercover, like sky marshals are with the airlines. You won't know who the teachers are, but they will be permitted that they will have to be trained, monthly training, monthly shooting exercises that they have to go through. I don't know that I have an issue with that, as long as those folks are trained to handle firearms. But, you know, just a simple thing, and I don't know what Bluffton Harrison does, maybe you don't want to tell us, but a simple thing of having a can of wasp and hornet spray in the classroom. Because the thing can shoot for 25 feet, and a teacher that can be one of their first line defenses if somebody gets into their classroom. But hornet spray in somebody's face, just to slow them down. Or you look for a hard object that you use to throw at the individual, blocking the door, all of those kind of things. I think it just causes us to rethink, and I think school corporations is going to be forefront on your mind. What can we do to harden security in our school building? We have a building in the district. I was there last summer for a meeting with some school superintendents and school administrators, and I walked in the front door, went through another door, and I was looking for what am I going to have to do to get into the building. There was no problem getting into the building. I just walked through and I said, "Do you have like security in the air block here? Do you have like a secure area?" "No, but I'm sitting," and the secretary saying, "But I'm sitting right here. They can, you know, I can tell if something's going to happen." It's like, well, not if they shoot you, you know? And then all you had to do is just take off down the hallway. I mean, that building nothing had been done to that building to harden security. And there's lots of cash in schools' operating funds that they can use that cash to pay for things, to put extra locks on doors and security, intercom systems. I think we need to leave it up to the school boards, school corporations to do a lot of that. And I think a lot of churches are doing that as well. As Matt said, it's become a house of worship issue as well.
Would you support raising the age?
I don't have a problem with that for assault weapons. I really don't. I don't know why the NRA. I don't understand why the NRA.
When a 19-year-old can't buy cigarettes, but they can buy an assault weapon, it just makes no sense.
No, I don't disagree.
I would add to that, I would commend all of you for your work for the Indiana School Safety Specialist Academy. We send 5 of our people per year to update their training for that. In fact, they all are on team with that. That's completely funded in the state of Indiana, and I don't know of other states that are. When I talk to other administrators from across the country, and also the Indiana Secured Safety Grant. Our district receives about 50,000 hours per year through that grant that we use for our school safety things such as security cameras, secured entrances, SRO. We've been able to do a lot with that. So when I talk to administrators from other states, they're shocked at what we actually have access to here. That's not to say we're not trying to be better and make our school safer, but I appreciate what you think.
Down East Central Indiana, I can't remember the name of the school corporation. There's a YouTube video that you can watch. They're considered to be the state. They've been named the safest school in America.
Shelbyville.
Shelbyville Senator license.
Yeah.
But they spent $400,000. I mean, they have smoke cannons, live intercom video with the police station and what's going on in the school. Just some pretty creative stuff that they've done. But as you said, you know, we appropriate about $18 million for school safety. And state police have trained nearly 50,000 people in active shooter training in the state. So it's out there for business and schools.
Travis, there will be a training session for churches here in this community. Scott Holliday and Rick Otis and I are putting together that state police training. We're going to bring churches together after that soon. We're just getting started.
We've got a county officer and a state trooper that go to our church, and they sit in the back pew.
intentionally, to basically watch what's going on. Keep that.
As long as everybody else. Back to intentionally.
They're all Baptists.
Maybe I switch the topic if I'm allowed to. Senate Bill 65, so this would be for Representative. Saying, I don't want you to teach my child that, we're fine with that, they can opt out, sign a form, we'll give them something equivalent. Now it's an opt-in, which means everyone has to give permission to teach it, which thousands of kids and corporations, logistical nightmare, no offense, we can't get field trip forms back in a timely manner, and now we're up in the air with, do they want or do they not want? I guess I would just encourage you that right now, parents we want them to inspect our curriculum at any time. If they have problems with any curriculum, they can always opt out, always. The opt-in just makes it, I understand the intent of the bill, I really do, but it also hurts those that we do here in Walsh County, the absence training. And it will hurt them, because if they don't get the form back, it's gonna make it much more difficult. There's some amendments now, went from 45 days down to 21 days. If we don't get a form back, then we can take some action. But I'm not gonna say it's an unnecessary bill, but it just makes it unnecessarily restrictive in order to do what we need to do. And everything's in place now that parents have the right to do. So
that passed on seconds Thursday, didn't it?
yeah.
It did. It's on Monday. The amendment got us to a place I'm a little more comfortable than what I was initially. I didn't like the bill as it came from the Senate or came out of committee for that purpose, and I think some of the unintended consequences of some of those other groups. What it is now is it's part of that packet of information you give to every parent at the beginning of the school year. If they don't return that opt-in within the, I think it's 21 days now, then they're in. It becomes now almost an opt-out, because now you automatically are in. It was a tough balance between, as you said, we want parents to review our curriculum. And with an opt-out provision, a lot of parents didn't know about it until it was actually being taught. Because it's here, your curriculum's in the system, now here, take this home to your mom and dad to sign, if they don't want to have what's in the curriculum. This now requires that I get to review it before my child even starts that class. So it was a balance between that parental right to know what's going to be taught beforehand, and at the same time, the unintended consequences create a bit of a problem. So it's a bill that I don't know was 100% necessary, but I think if it's going to move, it needs to be in the form it's in now versus what it was. So I think it's in a better place than it was. I can support where it's at now, because I think it doesn't put you in the position that you have to bring the form back. It just means you've got this many days to opt in, and if you don't sign the form, then you're in.
This is a great example of why you folks need to be involved with what we do. We passed that bill out of the Senate, and I voted for it. And it wasn't because it all sounded like the right thing to do. We pass it out, send it over to the House, and then I start getting calls from Wendy Bailey and Dan Easley, folks in the county, saying, what are you doing to our program? My wife and I contribute to Alive and Well, which is the abstinence program. And it's like, well, what's going on? Well, they're saying the kids who need this the most are the kids who never see their parents. We'll never get them to opt in because we don't know who the parents are sometimes, because they never come around, and those are the kids who need it the worst. And it's like, okay, well, time out. Well, my first line of defense is to go to these guys and say, hey, help us out. We made a mistake. We got to get this fixed. So that it's something we all do. That only happened because constituents, folks that track what we do sometimes, called us and said, hey, you did the wrong thing. You need to help fix this. So I'll admit,
We clean up senators all the time.
I'm just wondering, can you say that again about you?
That was off the record.
Sorry to pick on that.
What else is on your mind? Dan Leonard needs a really tough, hard question.
Senate Bill 213 is a directive bill that allows low-income housing.
Tax
those-
exemptions.
Tax exemption.
For property taxes.
If they come up with a 501c3 federal exemption, then they just automatically get it here. There's been several appellate court cases that said, no, you have to do something charitable before you get an exemption. Senator Eckerty's bill is just trying to get around all of those tax court decisions that make a lot of sense. It was in Ways and Means
This week.
Yep. You guys passed on a vote, did not vote on?
The typical process in Ways and Means is we hear the bill and don't vote it out during the hearing. We take testimony on it, and that's what happened on probably Wednesday, I believe it was. We heard the bill and took testimony on it. You didn't hear this from me, because I'm not allowed to tell you, but I don't think it's going to get a vote. This bill allowed anyone that did low-income housing that was a 501c3 to be taken off of the property tax rolls. It's local taxes now. Didn't affect state revenue because the state doesn't get any of those local property taxes, but it would affect you. There are counties in the state that do exempt 501c3s from property taxes, and there are some that not exempt 501c3s from property taxes. It's inconsistent across the state. These people were hoping for parity so that everybody would be treated the same. I'm trying to give you the argument on the other side. They say when there is, for example, a large corporation that is a 501c3 and they build a facility in Wells County and it's taxed, and they can go to another county, and I can't give you one exactly, but let's say Huntington County, and they're not taxed in Huntington County. It influences where they build that facility, and also influences where people invest money. It influences maybe there's more of a need for low-income housing in Huntington, and that's why they've done away with property taxes. I'm just saying those are some of the issues that were brought up in the testimony. It's very difficult for me from being an independent businessman most of my life to say that these people ought to get Section 8 housing subsidies for people that rent in those places and then be exempt from property taxes as well. That will be yet to come to see. This bill's been around for more than 1 year. I don't think it will pass out of the House. It's another one of those Senate bills that we have to just work with. But there was a lot of discussion about it. So how do you justify an independent individual that has rental property trying to rent and compete with someone who gets federal subsidies for low income and then also gets their property taxes done away with? The income level, which I was a little surprised from HUD that they're talking about, and I didn't look up specific counties that I represent, but I can tell you that in most of the counties across Indiana, it runs for a single individual runs somewhere between $36,000 and $38,000. If you're in that category, you are low income, qualify for subsidies. And these 501c3s are saying we are doing charity by supplying you a place to live. So I don't know, does that answer your question or tell you where it is? I don't know.
I was just trying to get a hard question.
Oh, okay, well, that's a hard check mark for you. Okay.
Signals that I received just this past week was confirms what President Leonard said about.
I've talked to the Senator directly about the whole thing, and it shouldn't go any further.
The problem I have, and I just found this out after the fact, is some of the 501c3s, executives are making $1 million a year.
Exactly.
That's how.
And with the Section 8 subsidy and what they're charging the renter, they're making higher than market.
Well, and I think there needs to be some kind of means test of the 501c3 organization itself. Because if you're paying your executive that much, they should not.
Family of four average, low income, average for family of four is $66,000. If you fall into, if you have a husband, wife, 2 children, and you make less than $66,000, and you Section 8 housing subsidies and you're in low income, considered. So it gives me some cause to support.
Thank you.
Well, we did an hour or 2 hours today.
Whatever you want.
I think we're scheduled for an hour, but, so,
Matt and I have a.
okay, I thought maybe you had other things on the agenda. Thank you, Matt, Travis, Dan, appreciate it very much for coming in this morning and, keep up the good work.
Travis, I think Matt's mother-in-law is a tired nurse. Tell you where they are.
Yeah. Matt.
I wonder why people chuckle when I say that.